Just so you know, so if depending on the conversation, so, and depending on my energy level, so we just see how it all goes. So, I guess we can get started. We'll get started, everybody's here. So, Gemara Tov, everyone. It is wonderful to see all of you here, those that are with us online. How are the holidays going for you so far? I mean, where are we? We're good? Taking temperature in the room. Okay?
Yeah, we are. Very good.
Okay, we're feeling good? Okay.
Great services.
You're not supposed to be feeling good right now. You're supposed to be right? So, what? Your tummy's Okay. So, this session we did last year, which was really successful, we did a sermon talk back, which really is, yes, we can talk about the things that I wrote, and I'm happy to do that, and that's what I wanted, but really it's to gauge a little more conversation from the content of the writing. So, you know, and I want to be very transparent. I think I've been a little transparent with you lately. I want to be even more transparent to note that, you know, there are certain writings that I have to do in the position that I hold. Right? I have to write about anti-Semitism. I have to write about Israel. I write about these things because I have a passion for them and combating them and loving them and all the things that go along with it. It's not the thing I love to write. The thing I love to write is what I wrote in the past 2 days. Like in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, these are the essence of what I believe that I'm called to do in this world, and that I believe is the essence. Again, it doesn't mean I'm free from not doing those other things. It means that when you see me talking about anti-Semitism, it's not the thing that you're going, I know he doesn't really want to write that. Like, he's doing it because we need to know about it, but it may not be his thing. You can still say, that was great, Rabbi, that's fine. I'll take that, that's totally okay. So, but this is really like more of like a Q&A experience. So I wanna, you know, I'll give you a little frame, and then I really want you to ask your questions and so we can have some food for thought. So we've started to theme the High Holy Days since my arrival. And I feel that sometimes theming the High Holy Days helps the rabbis give context to what we're talking about. So if you notice, last year was a little more about the world and about things going on, and there was about, really, we were in a precipice of heightened anti-Semitism. Guess what? It hasn't gone away. You know, even last year there was some questions in the talk back. Is it really relevant? Are we really? I think a year later, we can all turn into each other and say, oh, he was right. I told you so, right? So I told you so. Not in a good way, in a very bad way, but that it was something that was you know, an issue. So let's move forward from that. When we start to theme, we talk about, like, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? Immediately, that was last year. This year, we really wanted to focus inward. So we talked about return, rejoice, renew. What does that mean? What does it mean to return? Not only to physically return to space, and you can see that we've returned in wonderful, beautiful numbers, and we still have huge online presence, so we continue to grow and evolve, and that's wonderful. And then there are the other pieces, which are about how do you rejoice? How do you rejoice in moments? How can you hold rejoicing with the pain? And I believe you can hold both. I believe you can hold both because I have experience of holding both, and I've done it most of my life, and I know how to do it. And I know that so many others in this community do it as well. And so when we talk about rejoice, we're talking about what it means not only for simcha, right? When we talk about joy and like gladness. I'm not talking about simcha when I talk about rejoice. I talk about rejoice in we get to put one foot in front of the other if we are blessed. We get to have inspiration by being surrounded by community and family and friends and loved ones. And we can still be in the pain while finding joy. And so that is really where the rejoice part came from. And the renewal is always something that I believe in our lives we're ever striving to do. We're ever striving to renew ourselves. We have to renew ourselves because if we don't, we get complacent. And if anybody knows me, and I'm a New Yorker, you know how it goes, I don't settle for complacency. It's really about, I believe that it's endemic upon the Jewish mandate in the Jewish story that complacency is unacceptable. And I don't mean complacency by putting extra pressures. I mean complacency by saying, if we can figure out how to navigate past the situation, we can persevere and we can strive and thrive. And that, I believe, is what we're meant to do in this world, is to strive and to thrive. And that's why our tradition puts so much emphasis on education, on thinking out of the box, on really being thoughtful about how we make this world kind of more whole. And that, I believe, goes through these ideas of striving and thriving, and that goes to the idea of renewing ourselves. So you have these ideas, return, rejoice, and renew. Rabbi Cantor Bernstein brought us through to the beginning, sharing a little bit of her own story and the narrative in that. And then we had all different types of elevations through that time. We had some deep, dark yesterday to share with that, and then to also talk about potential. Rabbi Gimel brought us today through the idea of regret and what that means and how we interpret or reinterpret that. And then it takes us through this time to be in that thought process, and then to ascend, to go deep, to memorialize as we do during Mincha, as the afternoon service, and Yizkor. And then we move up to ascension, to Nila. So Lalot means to rise. So Nila is the raising, right? You're literally going. The Aron, like he mentioned, is the idea, the empty Aron is the coffin, and then this image of a coffin and seeing our own selves in it, and then all of a sudden now you get to Nila with the triumphant music, and then you're rising for rebirth and renewal. So when we return, we rejoice. When we rejoice, we renew, and that's how we start to understand. And I believe that's why we chose the themes. So I want to hear from you. That's a little bit. Now you got my framing. Now I want to hear from you. We have a few people in this room, so we can. I want you to share. There's no comment, no thought or question that is too deep. Go ahead, Joanne.
Before the service started last night, I was thumbing through the book and came to Roman numeral XXV 25, and it was a rabbi psychologist, and it resonated with me. It was about the traumas of your youth and how you hold them. Then you gave your sermon, and it was echoing the same thing. So today I snapped pictures of the 4 pages of that before I left, because I want to really take time with that, and that all resonated with me in my story as well.
Wow,
So that was just a great connection.
Beautiful. So also, I said it at the beginning of the service, at least this service today, not the family service, but I said it at the service. It's very important to really wander during Yom Kippur. Like, wander through the pages, wander through the prayers. We're holding the prayer. You know why Chabad is really good at what they do? Those of you who may have been former recovering Chabadniks. Chabad is really good at what they do because they put on a beautiful array of show to allow you to participate the way you feel you can participate. And on the side, there's usually a gentleman, it has to be a gentleman, that will be the Shliach Tzibur, the service leader that's davening and doing the ritual. As long as he has a minion in the room, as long as there are 9 other men in the room, post-bar mitzvah, then it's okay. But why I share that with you now is because the idea of you being able to wander, the community is carrying the service. We're all carrying it for each other. Not just the leaders, not just the choir, not just the rabbis. We're all carrying it for each other. I hear you, you're singing beautifully. I can see your smiling faces, most of you now, without your mask, it's beautiful. And even if you have a beautiful mask, it's beautiful too. So, I like to see smiling faces singing. And so the faces, they would see you singing, and it's okay for ever so often to go wander, because we got the minion. We're okay. We're good. And so your wandering is more important to me than you keeping up with every beat in the music. It's not, we don't need that. You don't need that in your life. You need to follow your own rhythm. And that's really important. The rhythm of your life is critical. And so thank you for that. That's beautiful. Go ahead, questions, thoughts? Yep, go ahead.
So you spoke a lot about last night about resilience, about, kind of picking yourself up from the trauma and, and turning it around and healing from those wounds. And I'm wondering if you you can speak about, you know, what you think, how you think people gain resilience. Because some people aren't able to do that, and some people are. And what do you think is the tools that people need to find resilience?
Yeah, thank you for the question. The question, just so I can repeat so everybody, if you didn't hear on the screen, so the question was, what do I think are the tools that enable resilience, right? That was the basic question. So a couple of things to that. So my mother did not have resilience. She was a person that I did not exhibit or observe as someone with resilience. Her resilience was very low. In some ways. In some other ways, it was incredible to hold down a high-powered job, to raise a child, to be able to function mostly in the world, hidden. That takes resilience in some ways, but it's not a healthy resilience. It wasn't healthy. And what I've come to realize is resilience requires, and I said it last night, I'll say it again, footwork. What does the footwork require? That's the question. So my take is, for me, everybody's gonna be a little different. For me, my footwork is knowing that I can't keep things bottled in that I know are going to be harmful, potentially harmful. So if I identify it as something I'm feeling, and I'm a big energy person, so I feel it with people around me, I feel it in myself, I feel it in my body. If I feel in my body that something is off, then I know there's something wrong. And I'm not talking about a gut feeling. Like, you know, people talk about gut, I'm talking about energy. So I can see someone, I can feel someone's energy, and I can say that's black energy. Black energy for me, I don't want, I'm, if you can guess, I'm an extrovert. So extroverts gather their energy from people around them, right? And introverts the opposite. So, and for me, I could feel when there's black energy around me, I tend to push away. And some people would say, oh, you're avoiding. No, I'm not avoiding. It's because that pathway is not good for me. And my mother at times has had black energy. Not all the time. There was a lot of light in her, but there was black energy in moments. And the black energy came out when she was in her addiction, mostly. And so I was able to see that. And so for me, the footwork was first identifying my energy field, right? To say, okay, this isn't like, I'm not feeling whole in myself. Something is off. Something is incomplete. Something is not right. And so then I need to go to, well, what are going to be my resources for that? I was really bad at that when I was younger because I didn't have any tools for that. Both my parents were divorced when I was 12 years old, right? I grew up mostly with my mom. My dad was around and very much involved in my life. I didn't mention my dad at all. He's still alive. He's still 84 years old, living in New York. I didn't mention him at all because he has a lot to do with the early part of the story, but the narrative was my narrative. And it was my narrative with my mom, so it wasn't his narrative to own. And so that was important to create a separation, an off deal, but just to know that he's very well alive and present and existing. We're not very close, but we're in terms of relationship, but I still love him, he loves me, we have a relationship. So that piece of life, I had to identify that. So for me, when I was younger, I didn't have so many tools. When I got to my early 20s, and my grandparents were a huge fixture in my life, just so you know, my maternal grandparents. A very big piece of my goodness is not only from my mom and my parents, both my parents, is really from my grandparents. You know, my grandparents were very much models in my life. And I was caretaking to them when I was 16, 17 years old, so they weren't, like, I didn't get to be a kid so much. I really was caretaking very young. And when I got to my early 20s, I realized I needed support, and so I went into therapy. I'm a huge therapy advocate. I see a handful of psychotherapists in this room. Some of you are on my panel.
Would you raise your hand?
Yeah, if you're a psychotherapist, I see a few here. So I went into psychotherapy. I said I needed to really deal with these issues and really needed to wrestle with them and really gain some perspective and wholeness. And I had a connection with my rabbi also, and I went for some spiritual guidance and counseling. That ebbed and flowed over a number of years, given my own Jewish identity evolution. But the therapeutic model maintained for me in many ways, and I continued the journey work that I needed to do. So the therapeutic model is really important. I'm going to give you a little insight into my marriage, which is a very good marriage. You know, very good. She's not a wallflower. So one of the things that she said when we got engaged, because her parents are also divorced, remarried. My father's remarried also, and in very healthy, wonderful marriages in their next evolution, in their chapters. And she says to me, "So great, yes." But, she said, "I don't know when you're going to propose, but if you're going to propose, I'm going to say yes, just so you know." And it's going to be wonderful. It'll be amazing, and then we're going into therapy. And why she said this was because she was very clear that both of us didn't have models when we were younger of really nurturing marriages. And I know there are a lot of people in this room that do have that, and it's a blessing. What a blessing to have that. I experience it all the time. I see families how they're animated. And God, my kids will have it as they grow up and have grown up. We save some therapy just for being a rabbi's kid, but that's another story. But not from the marriage. So, and it made us stronger parents too. So I think that, and she was very right about that statement was a very important statement to make, to say we're going to go into therapy, because it was to say we both have healing to do, independent of ourselves and together, and so let's do that. So the therapeutic model was really important. And having networks around us was really important, to have those close individuals who you can rely on. So I haven't, in the rabbinates, though I have a coach, that I work with regularly, happens to be a psychotherapist also, bonus. And he is really wonderful and amazing. He's been with me for about 8 years and really knows the landscape of rabbinics, knows Jewish life, is involved in his own synagogue, understands the Jewish world and community, and also relates on an executive level and understanding how you hold something so large and you're able to also continue to improve and evolve. So I don't ask anything of the congregation that I'm not willing to put out myself. So I just want to be very clear. That doesn't work. I don't say to someone, "Oh, go do this and go do that." No, it's I'm going to put myself first and foremost, and you can test any of the staff, they'll tell you that. So it's really, it's important. I have to own my part in order to do that. And there's one image that I hold on to always, which is the oxygen mask image. So the oxygen mask, on the plane, you get on, the flight attendant, they go through the rigmarole, put on the oxygen mask first before you put it on anybody else. That is essential. Self-care is no joke. It is, for people who tell me, "I don't have any time. I don't have time. I'm running here and there. I'm working 2 jobs. I don't have any time to do anything for myself. I live for my children. I live for my spouse. I live for others." That's not my philosophy of life. I live for me so that I can live for everybody else. I live for me so that I can be a better rabbi, a better parent, a better husband, a better father. Right? All those things. I live so that I can do for the community, but self-care comes first and foremost. So tomorrow, you will not see me in the synagogue. I will not be here. Don't call me. You can email. I'm not going to respond until the next day, until Friday. But I'm not going, because it's about self-care, right? Giving all, and then I need to take a break. And so that's really important. And it doesn't mean you don't work hard. It doesn't lessen your work ethic. I work hard. Many of you work hard. We all do. And so we need a time for a pause, a break. And what does that mean? It could mean a massage. It could mean Shabbat. It could mean, for whatever your things are in life, that's really key. So you're finding your area of healing is really important. So self-care, therapeutic models, and a support network are the 3 tools, primary tools in my life that I utilize on a regular basis. And they work. But they only work if you keep working them. So you're going to keep on working them, right? So that's it. So it doesn't let it go. You have to do it. Julie online, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I missed you today. Sorry, I wish I could be there, but I didn't want to spread my germs to anyone else, so I kept them here. I last night was incredible. Listening, and especially you talking about sort of honoring the brokenness, the broken parts, like how, because so often you see those as such a negative or a bad part, but honoring and cherishing those is kind of what I took from it. Sorry, I've got buses in the background. But my question is, when there are a lot of things like that going on, a lot of negativity, you've got your bucket that just, bottom's dropping out. And there's been, I think, a lot of that, like in the last several years. And I even find that myself my narrative just tends to be about all the negative things going on. And I'm usually a really positive person. And I like to talk about the positive. And when you find yourself doing that, you kind of live in that negative headspace. And especially if that's all you're talking about. Do you have a tool that you use or something you can recommend so that to pull yourself back out? Like last night was my wake up moment. When you said that, I went, wow, my narrative's been negative. I don't like everything I'm talking about. I want to focus back on that positive. I want to pull that silver lining back out. But do you do something so that it doesn't get to there, or that you see yourself doing that, I guess is what I'm asking.
No, it's a great question, Julie. I don't allow myself to stay in the negative ever. Like it just doesn't, it doesn't sit with me well. I actually, negativity is draining on my psyche. It's draining on my soul. And it takes up too much space. Remember I talked about the idea of contraction and Tzimtzum, I talked about God and contraction. That's a really important mystical understanding in our tradition. The rabbis talk about it all the time, the idea and concept of Tzimtzum. Tzimtzum is the idea of contraction, and something that's all-encompassing can become more, it can grow. So negativity, a little negativity can grow into a lot of negativity, just as more enthusiasm can breed more enthusiasm, right? It works both ways. So I tend to contract the areas of life that I don't want to stay in. So how does that work with the tools that I just named? And also, I'm able to more easily identify it. And one big thing, that's another piece to walk away with today, is that none of us are responsible for holding anyone else's pain.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be very clear about that. None of us are responsible for holding anyone else's pain. Our children have problems and challenges. Our family members, we hold them, we care for them, we love them. And they can be draining, right? It can be emotionally, spiritually, physically draining. All the above and any of the above. And so what do we do with that? Right? What do we do with that? So we can be there and be of service, but we don't have to own the pain. There's a difference between sympathy and empathy, right? Sympathize, you can be, I sympathize with you, I hear you, I send you love, I'm able to do what I'm able to do. But I also draw very clear fences around what I'm able to do and what I'm not able to do. So with my mom, for example, there were huge fences I had to draw at different times. There was a period in her life when she was really, she had early onset dementia caused by a lot of her own, past usage and stuff like that. And she would call me 20 to 25 times a day. Like she would just be on a regular spin. She wouldn't even know she's calling me. Like it would just be constant calling. And what I did was I had to get a voicemail that had an automatic response just for her. So that I could say that in the voicemail I used to say, Mom, this is probably, you've called me and we've spoken already, I love you, and I will speak to you soon. And that's what she would hear after I would answer the call once a day, and that was with some support, therapeutic understanding and how to do that, but that was my creation. The idea of taking care of myself, right? But it was also taking care of her. She wasn't remembering when I was calling, she didn't need anything in the moments. She just was trying to reach out. That lasted for about a year. That period was a long time, and many years ago. And it was hard to hold, but it created a fence around it. Torah has lots of fences, right? It draws lots of fences that we hold, and in Reform Judaism we broke the fences, right? We kind of flow in and out of them in different ways, and I'll do this works one way, this works the other. That's not really what Reform Judaism is about. It's about studying, deciding, observing. In that way, it's about also creating fences and boundaries for yourself to say, how can I be helpful in this situation? How can I support? And how can I love? And how can I not do it without being in the negative, like always spinning in the negative? So if it's our own negative about how am I going to support this person, how am I going to navigate, how am I going to do this, or how am I going to be seen, right? Part of being seen is also, I believe, is about the need for wanting other. So, for wanting more. And so I think it's about finding the places that nurture you and to feed those. Oh, working out is a big piece. I forgot that. Oh my God, that's a big piece. That's huge. That exercise, huge piece of self-care. Huge. I got in the Peloton at 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon because I didn't get to at 45 in the morning. So I had to go to that Peloton, but I needed that breath, right? I said, and I felt in the moment. I said, okay, I'm feeling it. I need to get on. I need to do. I didn't want to get on. Who wants to get on, right? Like I didn't want to get on. And I said, I got to get on. I got to do. I got it because it was good, and boy, was it good, right? I was ready. I was in the zone, and so I believe contraction is really important, Julie, around these areas. Good question. Yeah, go ahead. We'll go this way. Well, go ahead.
I don't think you meant to, but maybe you did. You seem to minimize empathy just now.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry about that. I forgot. I went off track. That's not uncommon. So, no, empathy is huge. Being in someone else's shoes doesn't mean that you have to sit in their shoes. That's really important. Doesn't mean that you have to be in that. Doesn't mean you have to live in that space. You can feel sorry for someone. You can respond to their pain. You can be in relationship with them in a healthy way. And that empathy, in my experience and in my pastoral work over these many years, empathy can be a trigger for a lot of people because people don't set boundaries sometimes with empathy. Well, I can't do that. My son needs me. My son absolutely needs me. He's struggling, and so I need to be there for him. Of course you need to be there for your child. There's no question. How you're there is up to you. But finding pathways to that is really critical. And I think that's really important for finding your own balance and space in that. But empathy is huge. Empathy is huge. Putting yourself in someone else's position, understanding that helps me a lot in my rabbinate. I also am very clear to create a boundary around that, I'll give you one example. I was 17 years in my previous congregation, to form a lot of relationships. And I was just telling my clergy partners, I said, and the clergy suite actually, because I started to get some emails recently from former congregants asking to speak to me. But more than I've gotten in years past. And for whatever reason, I don't know what reason, but I have to draw a boundary around the empathy piece around that because I know these people, I know their stories, I know their history, I know I'm not their rabbi. And I can't hold them in that moment anymore. So I have to be able to say to them, I love you, you're a wonderful human being, I want you to go speak to your rabbi, or I want you to go speak to another individual. I can't hold you right now, I got this. And it's exponential from this, right? So got a lot to hold, so it's just not gonna work that way. Go ahead.
So if you, I know this is a time to reflect on regrets and harms you've done to others. If you made it like an inventory of that, looked at the character defects that went along with it and made amends, if you're actively working on correcting those defects, do you still have to revisit those regrets and harms each year?
Oh, it's a great question. That's a great question. So do you want to repeat the question real loud?
We can't hear it.
Oh, they can't hear it online. Sorry. Okay. So the question was, you have to repeat. If you are actively looking at your defects and you've made amends and you are doing the tshuva, right? And you are and you're doing the work. You're actively in the work. Do you have to revisit those every year? Right? Was that the question? Okay. So the answer is, I don't think you never stop revisiting anything you do. For me. The list keeps getting longer, I'm afraid. It does. But I don't think just because you make amends, it's something that it's in check and that it's over. It's like someone who's an addict is not in, continues to go, if they're in recovery, will go to program, will go to other support, because they need to continue to check their inventory. It's really, really, really important. And so you can make amends. You're not responsible for the amends, let's say, again, unless they happen again. But I think it's really always important to keep the inventory around what you're making amends for in your inventory. So did this happen this year? Ask yourself the question, did I do this? Did this come about in my life now? What's going on? That's key. That's key. That has to happen. By making amends about it, if it hasn't happened, that's why I have a really hard time with the Hashem. I've told many of you this. I struggle with it. I think communally it's important because I think it brings us together in wrestling with the things that we communally have missed the mark on. And we have. And the list that Rabbi Gimbo read you in the last service is a remarkable list from you. From you. Right? It's not, we didn't make it up, it's from you. And that list almost mirrors what comes out of the liturgy. Almost. Right? A little added. We added politics was in there, right? Don't get, forgiving people who may not see how you see. And I think that's really critical. But in reviewing the inventory is critical. I don't think you can step away from that. Making amends on it, I think just requires the inventory check and where you are.
But where does tashlich fit in this picture? Isn't that getting rid of it?
Yeah, so tashlich means, in Hebrew, lishloach means to cast away, to send, right? So tashlich is the sending of the Nevarez, of the sins, right? You're getting rid of them. We're always getting rid of stuff. Every year, I had lawyer shores last week with 500 of my nearest friends, right? But tashlich was great. I did tashlich, I cast away things that I've been casting away for years because I haven't necessarily been active in them. But I think casting them away helps me remind myself that I want to stay away from that area. I want to remove myself. I don't want to get back to that behavior or that defect. Or that I have no room in my life, in this point in my life, to get involved in that area again. So I'm going to move past it. So the tashlich is something that I need to get rid of. It's the casting. It's really getting rid of it. So for me, it's cathartic. Let me tell you, writing the sermon last night, that was cathartic. Right? That is cathartic. Writing, journaling, I'm not a big journaling person. Nicole loves, she's a big journaler, and has a great gratitude practice every day, journaling. I don't, it's not my real, writing, like, to community, right, that I love doing. And this is the genesis of a book that I'm thinking about, the writing that I did last night. So it's what I've been pondering for a couple of years, but it will, I don't know when that's gonna happen. When my next sabbatical, I have no idea, so. Sabbatical, you hear that? Sabbatical. It's gonna happen. Not soon, but it'll happen. Dan, you're in the room? Dan, sabbatical. Okay. Oh, I hear
years, they counted.
Okay, questions? I know we had hands up. Oh, that's good, we had a hand up over here, now go back to you. Go ahead.
So I want to just first start off by saying thank you. Your sermon really resonated with me in a moment when I'm facing a lot of challenges. And I left yesterday. I swear, I said to my husband when we left, I was like, I feel like you wrote it for me. I'm sure many people in the room probably feel that way. So I just want to, first of all, thank you for taking your vulnerability and sharing it with us, because it was something I personally needed to hear. I love that you're speaking about self-care and boundaries. And one of the things that I find for myself is I'm kind of in this generational gap between my parents' generation, which they didn't have a lot of self-care practice and there wasn't a lot of awareness for self-care. And then the generation of students and teens that I work with where self-care and putting boundaries is something that, thank God, in our society has become more talked about and more common practice.
Yeah.
But yet I find that I struggle between allowing myself, based on society, based on what other people will think, if I make certain decisions that I feel are right for me, but in society these are not the types of decisions we make. How do you, two questions.
Yeah.
One, how do you necessarily allow yourself to set boundaries when maybe those around you are not necessarily supportive, or think that there's another way to go about it and that it doesn't require setting a boundary potentially.
Yeah.
And then,
Let me repeat the question so people online can hear. The question is, how do you create boundaries when there may be other systems or individuals or people around you that don't necessarily, or society, that doesn't necessarily support that kind of self-care taking? That's what you're talking about, okay.
and as like a secondary to that, like, I was thinking about this on the drive over, I left my phone at home. And it was the first time, and I don't even remember how long, that I was just looking out the window when we were driving to synagogue. And I was just letting my thoughts, like, I wasn't on my phone, I wasn't checking in with people, I was really with myself. I don't even remember the last time I was like that.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking about how, like, and this goes in line with the first question of like all the pressures that we're constantly facing because we're constantly connected in a way that we never used to be connected before. So how do you find those moments of self-care when it's like we have this over-stimulus and this over-connection of needing to connect with everyone and needing to share these moments with everyone? How do we take those moments for ourselves?
How do you find the stimulus of care when we are overloaded with, consistent bombardment of information and life, right? That's right. It's great questions, right? So first of all, thank you for your vulnerability, right, and sharing that. I really appreciate it. And by the way, I have copies of my sermon here, but they'll be out. The sermon will be out, like we put out all the sermons online. There's been a lot of, even in the last night and today, requests for the paper, for the actual digital document. That will be posted in mine. And I invite you to share it. I have no problem sharing it outside the community. I invite you to share it on social media, share it wherever. I don't care, because I want people to feel that they could, that there's possibility, right? That there is a shift, and that there's a clergy person in San Diego that can share their own story and from the beam in front of thousands of people and say, it's okay. And I got you, and we're in it together. So that doesn't answer your question, but that just came up. So for me, I don't really care about what other people put the constraints on, or what they see, or what they feel. Listen, moving out here was not easy on our family. I cared that they were so caring, and I cared about their feelings about it. But my life is my life, and it's not their decision to own my choices or our choices, right? As long as my nuclear family was intact, we felt okay, and we felt right that was the right decision to make. And everything took 2.5 years, but it's quieter now. So, quieter, I didn't say quiet, I said quieter. So, we're gonna smile for a second, because Yom Kippur, I already gave you one side of the family, that's a whole other. It's good enough, it's good. So, for this piece, I think we need to shut the simulation, not simulation, the live stream. For me, I was being a little cheeky when I said I don't care, but it's not about not caring, it's about my decisions are not derived by other people. If it were, I would not be where I am in this moment. If I made decisions based upon my mother and her needs and her actions, I would not be sitting here with all of you, there is no doubt. If I decided that I didn't want to be an architect, that's what I originally was going to do in my life, and went to college for, I would not be here, right? If I decide that I need to take self-care, I need self-care. My son came into me yesterday. I'm giving you a lot of family. It's okay. It's good buddy. He came into me and he started talking about something for Friday, right? He said, right before services, I said, Ethan, he was one who Jen saw earlier. I said, Ethan, I said, not right now. Like I know I need to give all my emotional, spiritual energy to the next 25 hours. He immediately retreated because it was not in any pain or anything. It was a benign thing. And he knew that this is the time. And I was able to set that boundary and not have to listen to what he needed for 2 days from now. But there's also about situational, understanding, having situational awareness. That is key. Situational awareness. Not every scenario operates in the same way. So if you're talking about a family member, for example, that has a different idea of what self-care looks like, and someone else is giving you other, it fits into another space. You have to balance that. That's important. But at the end of the day, this is your life. Your 2 feet are doing the footwork, and that's where your connection to divine elements and community come, not by other people making our decisions. If you were a child, this would be a very different conversation, right? We're talking about honoring parents, we're talking about learning and growing and doing. But I'm not telling my 16-year-old at this point, you have to listen to me any which way about politics, about doing, about what you do, about fasting, of which he's not. He's making his own choice to do it. But is he here chanting Torah? Is he here in services? Is he wrestling and fighting with God in the text? You better believe it. Because I want him to. But that's his process and his journey. And our journeys are individualized. They're not owned by anybody else. So if we can take off that ownership tag off of ourselves, because it doesn't belong, none of us belong to anybody else. We're all kind of for rent here, we're all kind of on this, we're on borrowed time in this world, and we have one journey, one life, and we gotta make what we gotta make with it. And I'm not here in this world and earth. I have to do what I need to do and operate in the confines and the constructs of what life gives us. But society, especially at this point, I don't find society pushing back so much against self-care. I find there are many tools and modalities that are promoted, but the self-care elements have to work for you. So I just invite you to look within, and to gently and courageously push back against the forces, the energies that are pushing against your own care. Does that help a little bit? Okay. Go ahead, Ari.
I'm asking.
Real loud.
Okay. I'm asking, what is this in relation to tshuva, repentance? Because I've been trying to, for me personally, I this is a season when people are supposed to seek forgiveness and so on, but I find myself kind of pondering, the importance of giving forgiveness without expecting an apology. Because to me personally, I think to myself, well, most people would like an apology as kind of like an ego kowtowing, and I think to myself, well, that in a sense is a form of sin, of being able to forgive without expecting an apology is something I've been trying to do, and I guess in what correlation is that to Yom Kippur?
So what correlation is forgiveness and asking for an apology in that sense? So, according to our tradition, we can never ask for an apology from anything or from anyone. We need to make that very clear. The work is on us to do the tshuva, the turning. It is not on, you need to say sorry to me because of what I did. We used to do that with our kids when we were little. Well, I'm still waiting for an apology. Really? I mean, really? No, we're trying to teach them. Yes, I understand. But at the end of the day, you can't ask an adult. Let's keep it to adults, right? You can't ask an adult to say you owe me an apology. Why? Why? Well, you have the right and wherewithal to share with an individual how an action may have hurt you. But the hurt is your hurt, and it's your experience from what that person did. Whatever transgression that was. It is not theirs. It is not your responsibility or in your power agency in our tradition to ask them to forgive you. Authentic teshuvah, turning, has to be the individual asking for that person. Now, since you brought it up, I'll just also share with you, I'm sure there are many people here, including myself, when you have done teshuvah and someone doesn't accept your apology, traditionally, you offer 3 times. After the 3rd time, if a person does not accept your apology, you have no responsibility moving forward, according to our tradition. In my own personal belief, I don't think you need to ask 3 times. I think an authentic tshuva comes
That's showing your New Yorkness.
That is. Yes.
That's right.
Go Yankees 62. Oh.
Don't go there,
I know, we're trying to keep it clean. Yeah. So, that is really important. It's really important. No, what I was saying personally, I don't believe that authentic tshuva, if you're being authentic, that someone who you transgressed is going to is not going to respond to you authentically, especially someone you love, like I the first time. It may take a little time for the relationship to rebuild or the situation to ameliorate itself. That's okay. That's part of the journey, right? That's okay. But what our tradition is trying to say in the strictest of terms is that you have a mandate to do the tshuva, but you don't have a mandate for it to be accepted. That's the bottom line. That's the pshat. That's a basic understanding. So we don't have, there's no pulling at it that you need to get forgiven. We may want it. We may want an acceptance of it, right? Because we're doing the tshuva. Oh, well, you should accept it. You should say, I'm sorry. It's not how life works all the time, right? And so our tradition is very clear on how life doesn't work well, right? It's a very good example. Torah is a beautiful example of family dysfunction, of family challenge and irony and wrestling and working with humanity and all the areas that go along with it, and the beauty too. I think we had hands up. Yep, go ahead.
So this holiday season has been the most meaningful to me ever. Your sermon last night made me cry. I'm vulnerable. Some people have called me an empath, so I do pick up energy very well. I'm celebrating the fact that 2 years ago, right before Yom Kippur services, I was diagnosed with cancer. So I live my life since then and really focus on self-care. The things I do is, people don't even understand what I do, but it's very important to me. And what I really do is I choose not to give away my energy or my anger or my response to people. I just choose not to.
Beautiful.
And so I set boundaries with the people that are around me, but it's very, very unfortunate. A family member really dropped a bomb on our family, and it was directed towards my son's girlfriend. And I chose not to be angry, because every time you're angry, you're offline, your immunity is offline for 5 to 6 hours, and I can't go there because my immunity is very important. So I took in what she said, I didn't respond, but I also, it's really hard, it's my mother-in-law, and she's hurt my husband and my kids, and I want to, she doesn't have high regard for me, and that's okay. She doesn't have to. But I want to mend that relationship or get to a point where we can all be together again. Like, that's important to me. So when we were talking about the bucket, the drip drip, that was, my husband used that as the example. Cool. That was his drip drip moment. Okay. And I want to connect our family as much as we can.
And so, I mean, if we're online, did you hear her? Were you able to hear her? Okay, mostly? Okay. Okay, so thank you for that share, and thank you for being vulnerable. Repair is important, right? And family repair is important, but you can only do your part, and it can only go so far. So wanting something to happen may not actualize. And I think setting our expectations too high sometimes can impact us. So when we do the incremental work, and that's the footwork, when we do the incremental work, that's how I believe we're provided for. So striving to try to mend relationships that are broken, that's part of the work. That's part of seeing the light, right? Is to try to do that. I tried to do what I could to mend the relationship with my mom as much as I could, and I did, to an extent. Like, it wasn't what I envisioned or wanted, like, at the end of the day, but it was what I was able to do. And I think coming to acceptance and surrender over that is really key. Because surrender is critical. We cannot control, the serenity prayer is a beautiful, biblical, divine prayer. Does everybody know the Serenity Prayer?
Yes.
God, give me the acceptance,
Courage.
the courage. Right? I say this every single day. Anyway, so thank you. So Serenity Prayer is something that operates in my life every single day. And I think that, clearly not today. I really feel that's like when I was joking about the bless them, change me last week in my Rosh Hashanah sermon. It's not a joke, it's a real mantra that we use. So like your mother-in-law, bless her, change me. You can be the change, but you can only go so far as to do what can actualize in the mended relationship. So surrender to that. We have time for about one or two more questions. Yeah.
So as opposed to you being the extrovert, I'm a real introvert. And one of the things that's gone on for me for years is like at the high holy days, the time that I feel the most connection to Judaism and myself and religion and God is at Tashlik. And I prefer to do Tashlik as much alone as I can.
Sure.
I don't want to be part of 500. And I stopped coming to services for many years because I would come to Friday night services or high holy day services and sit in the sanctuary and walk out more depressed, surrounded by the alleged community. And I find this year I feel more comfortable sitting in the back of or in the social hall because I don't feel, talk about boundaries, but somehow the weight of the community and the sense of like who's here and who's not,
Yeah.
I don't know. So it's a different experience. I've had to find my way back to Beth Israel, but very slowly and carefully, because I still don't know if I feel like I belong, but I feel better being a part of it. But there's also, introverts I think come at it from a different place, because I don't get my energy from being here with 500 people.
I get it.
I have to go home and recover.
Yeah. Yes. And we have quite a few introverts in this community, and I think part of it is finding the boundary, right? Creating the boundary. You did this year, and I'm hopeful that may lead you to doing that a little more. We have people who are self-designated introverts every week at services. Every week they come. They sit by themselves, or they sit in their own space. Sometimes they come up, we say Shabbat Shalom, sometimes we pass, sometimes they just walk out. But they feel a sense of wanting to be here, even though they're not necessarily connected in the communal aspect. But there's something empowering about the music, the prayer, the whatever it is. And I continue to encourage you to find that space. It doesn't have to be about the crowds. It can be about having your space. And that's why we created space in the chapel, and we will continue to maintain that. Because we know that people sometimes just want more intimate space, and that's okay. We'll want to be removed a little bit. That's fine. It doesn't have to be all. One thing should not, if we learn anything from this pandemic, one size does not fit all, and will not moving forward. So we'll continue to do that. I appreciate the bravery and your opening up. So thank you. Thank you. One more. We'll do one more. Go ahead.
So the word that keeps coming in my head is resilience, is what I attach to you.
Yeah.
And when you were a child living through your experiences,
Yeah.
how did you make a decision? It sounds like you had a support system with your grandparents and the rabbi. I don't know how.
To an extent, yeah.
But when did you decide that you didn't have to live that life, or you could get beyond it and become who you are today?
Great question. When did I decide to live the life when I talk about resilience? It was about my early 20s. It was my early 20s. My grandmother had just passed. She was 21. I was 21. I had just graduated college. I came back. I was almost 22, and wasn't sure what was gonna. I had moved back to New York for work, and I said, okay, let's see how this is all gonna go, you know, and you know that time became a trigger, right? Because it was kind of a moment in our lives where the matriarch of the family was now gone. And there was discomfort already in their relationship, and my mother and my grandmother's relationship. Remember, she left for 10 years, right, and then came back. And there was some healing that went on in later years, but not much. And that was, and then my mother was in still struggling. And it became very clear to me, because I never moved back. When I was 18, I was out. right? I was out, I went to college, I came back to my apartment, I did, I worked for a few years, and then I eventually decided to go to rabbinical school and got in, moved to Israel. That was key, to my resilience, my understanding that this is not the life that I want. This is not, I need to move past this and transcend the pain and all the stuff. And anxiety came up a lot also in my early years. That was something that was very triggering for me, the anxiety that I was feeling, the discomfort, right? And so, and I think my resilience pushed me. The second level I had to get to was the shame, right? So resilience was the piece. So I had the resilience. But basically by my mid-20s, I got to a place where I was pretty resilient. Then when I was making my way into rabbinical school, and then I said the shame was still there. I never talked about. People knew my mom, but she was the fun person. She wasn't. They didn't know her story, and she was always eccentric. So there was always something interesting about her. How she was in the world, and so. I'll just give you one anecdote and then we'll close up. So, I was in rabbinical school during 9/11. And everybody was in New York, right, everybody. And the president, and it was very hard for us to be there, obviously. There were a lot of New Yorkers, a lot of people all over, there were everywhere, right? And we were living there during the height of the Second Intifada also in Israel. So it was like, my homes were being ripped up all around me, right? And I can imagine for many of you, you have your own stories of that day. So when the next day, the president of the university, of the seminary, who just started, he was a professor for many years in LA, he had just started as the president, he comes up to me the next day, and I'm in my mid-20s, right, at this point, comes up to me the next day, he's like, I just spoke to your mom. My mom? I said, you're not talking, not me, right? And he's like, your mom. She's so concerned about what's going to happen with the program and what we're going to do to protect you, given that, and the students, given that we're in, these lives that we're living. So my mom had the intuition to understand the nuance and the complexity, had the wherewithal to get a hold of the president. I don't know how you do that, like in that moment, like of crazy. And I had time on the phone with him, right? So talk about resilience. Part of my resilience was the modeling for my mom in some ways, that she did it. Again, not always in beautiful ways and in painful ways, but there was something there about survival, right? But it was also to say that the second part was to work on the shame, right? To work on the piece that says, shame doesn't belong to me. This was not my story. I didn't create the story. I was born into it. I'm not an addict. I'm not a person who exhibits that. I'm not a person, I do good in the world. I try. It's not my story to own. So I had to get to that place where the shame became the focus and the ability for me to surrender it. And I did. And that's when my own, the walls came down for me. There was a guardedness that I held internally. I don't know if you could see it externally, but I could feel it internally all the time. And I felt like there was something guarded about what was going on in my story, and that I was not, what are you talking about? I'm resilient. I could get through this. I can get through anything. I'm good. I wasn't good. I was still operating with a lot of shame. And I had to get there, and I had to do a lot of work to do that. But I did. And so, hence why I'm able to stand up in front of thousands of people and tell you the story without any issue. A little issue, but I feel very comfortable sharing the story. I hope that helps a little. All right.
Thank you.
I wish you all reflection, introspection, full tummies at breakfast, and all good things. I will leave sheets here for both of my sermons, and again, we're going to have digital and online, Rabbi Gimbel will start parsing tomorrow the different segments of our services, so they'll be on our YouTube, and we'll send them out to the congregation. So, thank you all for being here, and